Good evening. Welcome to the sixth and final Red Rose Young Farmer series. Hopefully you can all hear me. I really can't see anybody or hear anybody, but I think that's the way we're probably going to have to keep it for the duration of this talk. So you'll be able to see myself and also one of our other vets, James Hartley. So I'm hoping if things go horribly wrong and you can't hear me or I go dead, James is going to step in and take over the reins. This is the Hoof Care and Lameness talk. So I probably should straight away just say one thing is that unfortunately at the end of this talk, you're not going to be able to go and foot trim a load of cows. It's not that type of talk. So we're probably going to talk more about the basics of identification of lame cows and maybe why lameness is such an important issue. One of the things also to say is that I think that as far as I'm aware, that for any of you who have attended all 6 talks, I think we're going to email a copy of our certificate confirming your attendance and saying you've attended every talk. So congratulations if you've attended all 6 talks, because that's quite an achievement. Hoping that this is going to take maybe about 40 minutes tonight. Usually when I do some of my talks, I quite like when people ask questions and it's a bit more interactive. So feel free to type any questions you have into the chat box, and James is going to keep an eye on things as we go, and he's quite happy to interject with some questions so we can just make it a little bit more informative. So I suppose I probably should say who we are. One on the left is me. You could probably pick that up already. I'm Michael, one of the vets here at Oak Hill, one of the many vets. I'm sure if you've attended some of the other talks, you've seen probably most of our vets at this stage. So I've been here at Oak Hill for 10 years, and I'm going to do most of the speaking tonight. James is one of our newer vets here at Oak Hill. He's sort of here for tech support tonight, and you know, when things go wrong, he's gonna bail me out. If things do go really, really badly, and if you're looking for something to do when my screen goes blank, there is a very, very informative YouTube video from Tom Pemberton, where Tom has been to see James and family who are dairy farmers in Remington. Just put up a new setup with robots. Really good video, well worth watching. So, as I say, it's you don't have to maybe watch it just now. You put in 45 minutes time, you can have a watch. So I suppose a little bit about who I am before we start. I've been qualified as a vet now 16 years. Makes me one of the old ones. No matter which meeting I now go to, I'm one of the old ones, unfortunately. Graduated in 2004 from Dublin, University in Dublin. Came to work in the UK straight away. So I spent 4 years working in North Yorkshire, dealing with quite a few high input, high output type of herds. And after that, spent a year in New Zealand. So these pictures on the right are some pictures from New Zealand. And probably one of the things that I've learned really over the last 16 years is almost no matter where you go in the world, if you're talking about dairy cows, everyone has problems with lame cows. It's a really, really big problem in the industry. There might be different reasons in different parts of the world as to why lameness is such a problem, but actually, no matter where you go, lame cows really is an issue for everyone. And it's certainly something that lots of people in different parts of the world have put a lot of time and effort into trying to reduce. And you know, everybody wants less lame cows, don't they? You know, it is a big deal, but it's also quite a complicated area. And tonight, I think we're probably going to focus more on identifying some lame cows, talk a little bit about mobility scoring, very briefly touch on some of the preventative things we can do. Later in the talk, we're also going to try and do a mobility scoring quiz. So I have a video for 10 different cows, and we're going to try and we're going to get you guys to score them for mobility and collate the results at the end. So James is going to try and run a poll. But what we're going to get you guys to do is we're going to play the video of 10 cows, going to get you guys to write down what you think they are, what they score as. poll you all at the end so that we can see, what people think, and then replay the videos with the answers. So hopefully that'll work. Don't have a lot of time tonight to talk about actual real specifics of different types of lesions and actual different types of treatments. That's probably a topic for another day, really, but we'll try and concentrate on a couple of specific things and hopefully it'll be of use. Before really I should go any further, I suppose, as I say, one thing that I've probably learned is that lameness is a big issue all over the world. And a lot of the stuff that I'm going to start to present tonight and a lot of the slides I'm going to use and the pictures I'm going to use, I've taken from lots of other people, really. So particularly taken a lot of stuff from AHDB, so what was Dairy Co, which is the levy body, and all you guys as dairy farmers will actually pay a little bit into Dairy Co every year, every month and every year. So there are actually some really good resources on the Dairy Co website, so well worth a look. And then just some other people, there's been mountains of research work done on lameness, so people like Nick Bell, Laura Green, the University of Bristol, and also I've taken some stuff from Dairy NZ, the levy body in New Zealand, so got to acknowledge everyone as we go. And this is the link to the AHDB webpage. Really well worth a look. There's loads of info on there, loads of info on all different aspects of lameness management, lameness treatment, and it's there. It's free to everybody, so really worth having a look. Yeah, and look at, as I've said, lameness is a big issue, and it doesn't really matter who you talk to in the industry. It's a big issue. We've got vet surveys saying that vets and dairy farmers highlight lameness as being one of the real big issues. There's countless articles in the farming press about how we deal with lame cows, how we prevent them, how we treat them. It's a huge area. And I suppose one of the real drivers of that is the fact that lameness is consistently highlighted as one of the main reasons for culling of dairy cows. So nationally, statistics start to vary, but nationally people are talking about maybe people are culling 22% of their dairy herd every year. That'll vary significantly from farm to farm. But I don't think that's an unrealistic sort of a figure. I think a lot of our clients will be culling between 20 and 25% of their cows every year. And then when we talk about why people are culling cows, well, fertility is a big one. Other health and mastitis is a big one. But lameness is a huge issue. And lameness is always consistently highlighted in the top 3 reasons for premature culling of dairy cows. And, it's a welfare issue, but it's a hugely significant economic issue for people as well. And the graph on the right-hand side, even though it doesn't necessarily show up very well, is a graph from the RVC in London, which looks at what stage in the dairy cow's life does she start to pay you back. And really, we're looking at with dairy cows, probably somewhere in their second lactation, before that cow is starting to pay you back. So any cow that you cull in the first lactation or at the end of her first lactation really hasn't made you a lot of money. If anything, they've cost you money. And lameness in heifers is certainly an issue. And I think lameness as a cause of premature culling is a real biggie, really. So something we all have to be aware of. I suppose one of the other things that we probably really have to be aware of is that as an industry, it's not just vets and farmers that are looking at lameness as an issue. These are just a couple of pictures I've just grabbed off some stuff online, but the top left is picture straight off the RSPCA web page. What are the key welfare issues in dairy cows? Lameness straight away is at the top of the list. There are lots of other people who, lameness is so visible, really. There's just lots of other people who look at dairy farming, who look at what we do, and it's easy to see a lame cow, and the fewer lame cows we can have as an industry, the better. And it doesn't matter where you go. Bottom right picture is a news article from a magazine in New Zealand. These guys are looking at lameness as an issue. All over the world, lameness is sort of a welfare issue and sort of something in the industry that we need to tackle and we need to do better. So yeah, how many lame cows have we got? I suppose that's one of the real questions, isn't it? How many lame cows have we got? How many cows are lame at any one time? And a lot of the guesstimates that are done on number of lame cows would sort of suggest that maybe, as a snapshot, if you went down into an average dairy farm, 25% of the cows would be lame at any one time. Now, it's really difficult to get this information because how do you accurately get it? We've got lots of different studies, but if you look at some of the research studies that are done by people who are trying to put together research papers, and there's a really good example of a paper in 2010 that did just this, where they went into a farm as a researcher, mobility scored cows over a 6 to 12 month period. And the data from those type of studies would actually suggest lameness could even be a little bit higher. So a particular study in 2010 said, 33%, a third of dairy cows were lame in the average herd at each mobility score. I was just looking at some of the supermarket data for 2020, and some of those figures would suggest that the lameness levels are about 4%. Now, I don't really know which of those to believe, but I think it is important for everyone to sort of establish how much lameness have I got in my herd, and once I've sort of established that, what am I going to do about it? So, and it's sort of independent of system. This isn't just a high yielding cow thing. This isn't just a big herd thing. Doesn't really matter what sort of system of dairy farming you look at. High yielding cows, they've got problems with lameness. Lower yielding grazing cows, you can still get lots of lame cows. This isn't a yield thing. This is something that we really have to look at on a farm by farm basis and say, well, actually, how many lame cows have I got? And as I say, what are we going to do about it? And it has sort of led to this thing in the industry where there are lots of interested bodies and there are lots of people trying to do something about it. So you can go onto the Dairy NZ website and there's oodles of information about how do we prevent lameness. Same with the AHDB website in this country, lots of resources in terms of how do we prevent lameness, and lots of other people like different vet practices, different bodies, all sort of interested in trying to help people have less lame cows. So if you are interested, there's actually loads of information out there and it's well worth having a look. And this is where it can all get very geeky very quickly if you're really into it. And I'm not that into it, so we're not going to push this too much. But over the last 30 years, there's been a lot of work done on looking at lameness levels in cows, what the best interventions are, how we reduce the number of lame cows, and actually how we roll that out at a practical farm level. So some of the interesting little bits and pieces that have come out that are probably relevant to maybe more the type of cow systems that we deal with, where cows are housed and cows are quite high yielding, would sort of include, so which cows go lame? And that's probably one of the first things to consider when we're looking at which cows go lame. And I suppose we predominantly deal with Holstein cows, generally housed for most of the year, and probably giving 8,000 litres and above. Actually, we're probably looking at which cows are most likely to go lame. Actually, it's the higher yielding cows. So what lameness tends to do is that higher yielding cows are more susceptible to lameness. And actually what lameness does to these cows is it reduces their milk producing potential. So when people start to look at lame cows in individual herds, it tends to be the higher yielding cows that are more prone to going lame. But actually those cows lose some milk. I think the average figure is something like between 350 and 400 litres across a lactation. So actually it's not necessarily very noticeable how much milk these cows lose. What sort of lameness does to these cows is it affects the higher yielding cows and brings their milk production down to sort of the level of some of the lower yielding cows in the herds. So even though it's not necessarily very obvious, these lame cows can still actually give quite a lot of milk. It's just that they don't give as much milk as really they should. So high yield is definitely a risk factor for dairy cow lameness. One of the other things that's a real big risk factor is days of milk. So when do cows go lame? Well, actually, there's a real peak in the number of lame dairy cows between 60 and 90 days calved. So probably months 2 and 3 after calving, there's a spike in the number of lameness cases. And a lot of that is probably to do with cows that have calved down. So these cows probably stand excessively, don't lie down in cubicles as much as they should, and in some cases may not have had routine trims or dry off. And then these sort of things feed through as these cows start to give more and more milk into us finding sort of more lesions, more bruising, more abscesses in cows that are 2 to 3 months calved. So one of the real crucial times to really target in terms of having less lame cows is to look at these cows that are 2 and 3 months calved, look at them carefully, look at them for early signs of lameness, and try and intervene where possible. And again, I think it's important to sort of reiterate these are sort of solutions that we're looking for on a farm by farm basis, rather than just saying there's a one size fits all and you just need to do A, B, and C and your lameness will go away. We are probably looking at trying to have some more bespoke solutions depending on what farms are affected and what the predominant types of lameness are on your farm. And this is just a little bit of a breakdown from some UK data of how much a case of lameness costs and actually where the costs come from. And even though the studies vary, I think a lot of people will probably agree that the average cost of a lame dairy cow is probably in the region of £300. And that is quite a lot of money. But when you start to probably look at the breakdown, I think it becomes a little bit more apparent as to why these cases of lameness probably seem to end up being so much more so expensive so quickly. And as I said before, actually reduced milk yield is significant, but in terms of, okay, how much this cow cost me because she's gone lame, it's actually only about 25% of the actual cost of the lameness case is to do with a reduced milk yield. As it turns out, the fact that these cows are harder to get in calf and more likely to get culled accounts for about 60% of the cost of a lameness case. And I think that's sort of things that we can miss sometimes, is that as soon as a cow goes lame, she's far, far more likely to go lame again. And any cow that goes lame sort of ends up being lame more than once, and especially a cow that ends up being chronically lame really is probably on the fast track to being culled. So I think culling is a huge, huge issue with lame cows, and actually is probably one of the main drivers of the costs associated with these cases of lameness. Actually, the cost of treatment and medicine costs associated with treating these cows is actually really small. Really, what makes up the cost, as I say, is yes, some reduced yield, but actually reduced fertility, harder to get in calf, and these cows are often culled and leave the herd sooner than they should. And some really good research in dairy heifers that, for instance, end up with a sole ulcer are a lot more likely to end up with a sole ulcer again in their second and third lactation if they've had lameness and a sole ulcer in their first lactation. So it's really, really important to try and prevent these cases rather than treat them. Treatment is necessary, and we're always going to have to treat some lame cows, but actually preventing these cows from going lame in the first place has some huge knock-on benefits in how long we can retain them in the herd, and how we can reduce the overall levels of lameness. So, and I don't know if this is new information or not for people, but actually when you break it down with lameness, where does lameness happen? Well, actually 90% of cow lameness is in the foot. Every so often you'll get a cow that's had a bit of hip damage or hurt its front leg, but actually 90% of cow lameness is in the foot. And of these cases, 80% of them are in the hind legs. So hind leg lameness, much more common than cows going lame in the front leg. And of those cases, they're in the hind feet. 80% of the cases are in the outer claw. So actually, when you've got a lame cow, it's almost certainly lame in its foot. Generally, they're hind leg lamenesses, and if they are, and this is becomes important in terms of how we treat cows and what we're going to try and do from a managing point of view. It tends to be lame on the back leg and lame on the outer claw. So that's just some useful rules of thumb when you're thinking about lame cows. Where are they lame? And what am I going to do when I lift their foot? Well, actually, it is back legs, outer claws. If we get lameness on the front legs, so we get a cow that's lame in the front, generally actually is the inner claw that is where these cows go lame on. So front legs tends to be inner claws, back legs, outer claws. And I think these pictures are interesting just because they maybe show sometimes just how difficult it is to trim cows that go lame in the front foot. This actually on the right hand side isn't a bad setup at all. We've got a cow and a headpiece, got its leg up and strapped to a block and got a belly band on it to stop it going down. But even so, quite a difficult thing to trim these cows' front feet. So I know some clients now have got tip over crushes. Certainly a lot of the foot trimmers will come with either tip over crushes or hydraulic crushes. And actually, these guys have probably it's much easier to treat these front leg lamenesses when you've got a really good crush. So a crush like we see here with a foot strapped to a foot block, yeah, it works. You can certainly trim these feet, but the newer, more modern crushes, tip overs and hydraulic crushes make it even easier to actually treat some of these front leg lamenesses. Hind leg lameness is a little bit easier. A lot of people will have these sort of setups where we've got a chain behind the cow and a strap around its leg to lift it up, and a block or not a block just to strap it to on the side of the crush, and away you go. And I think it's got sort of been consistently highlighted really in terms of studies for lameness and in terms of how we start to manage these cases, that having a good crush is essential. Having good kit is just essential, and being able to get a cow easily into a crush, lift its foot, have some sharp knives, is actually one of the real keys to successfully treating lame cows. And as it turns out, having sharp knives is actually quite a lot safer for the person using them as well. Blunt knives are a really, really good way to end up cutting your own hand. So having some sharp knives and cows well restrained in a decent crush makes such a difference. So one of the things that's probably come more to the fore in the last 5 to 10 years in the industry is the whole idea of mobility scoring. We use sort of mobility scoring. This is the term we started to use in this country. Other parts of the world, and maybe sort of some people in the industry will still use locomotion scoring as the terminology, but probably most people in the industry, certainly most of the industry bodies, have probably adopted mobility scoring as the terminology for trying to score lame cows. And really, I suppose mobility scoring is it's sort of a framework to try and give us some sort of objective scoring system for identifying lame cows. So we actually put some numbers to it, try and quantify how lame the cow is or is not. And I know dairy farmers and people who work with stock all the time, they're always looking at their cows, and people are always sort of keeping an eye out for lame cows in a way. And that's really useful. Sort of the advantage to something like mobility scoring, something a little bit more structured, is that it challenges you maybe to look at your cows on a sort of regular basis and go, actually, is that cow lame? And we're all guilty of it in a way. There's this term that people talk about, lameness blindness. You sort of look at your cows, the same cows all day, every day, and you sort of tune out a little bit sometimes, either the ones that are maybe low grade, persistently lame, or maybe cows that you sort of expect to go lame and then do go lame, and you sort of almost subconsciously filter them out until they're really staring in the face and they're actually gone quite lame. And something like mobility scoring sort of forces you to look at every cow and go, actually, is it lame or is it not lame? And then, approach it from there. It's a bit like me. I've got a dent on the bonnet of my car, and I have had it for a year, and I never see it now. It just doesn't exist. So, and I think it's a little bit like that with lame cows. Sometimes you see these cows so often, you almost tune out and sort of forget they're lame, or sort of subconsciously make them not lame. And you know, we are sort of quite big fans of mobility scoring, and I'm quite a big fan of mobility scoring in particular, because I think it can be a really, really good tool for reducing the number of lame cows. And we've had this thing in the industry probably for the last 5 years where people are now having to mobility score cows because of their milk contract, or because of farm assurance, or basically because someone's telling them to mobility score their cows. And I think in those situations, it becomes a little bit of a paperwork exercise, and we sort of do it because we have to do it. And actually, if we maybe turn it around in its head and we go, oh yeah, well actually, what am I going to mobility score? And if I do it and do it well, can I actually get some useful information? And actually, I think you can really. And really, the number one reason that we see for mobility scoring cows is to identify lame cows, and that we then go pick up their foot, have a look, trim them, and actually make them a bit better. And what we're really trying to do is trying to pick these cows up a little bit sooner when the lameness is a little bit less severe. And if we do that, there's actually a really good chance that we can cure them earlier and have less sort of knock-on effects. So I'm a really big fan of mobility scoring. I think it really does have a role. One of the other things that is useful, and it's, I think, something that we need to do more of, is we probably need to look at our farm performance. Each individual farm maybe needs to look at its performance and needs to use things like tools like mobility scoring to help them do that. So we talk a lot in the industry about benchmarking and about comparing ourselves to other farms in the industry and comparing ourselves to our neighbours. I think sometimes it's really, really important just to compare yourself to yourself. Mobility score, do it regularly, look at where are you now, look back 6 months, look back 12 months, and actually look at, what sort of progress you've made. And, every so often, every farm has blips. Every farm, whether it be fertility, mastitis, lameness, everyone ends up with a few more problem counts than they would like at some stage. But I think it's really good to challenge yourself and go, well, actually, this is my lameness level at the moment. 12 months ago, actually, I was doing better. So benchmarking you against yourself, I think, is a really, really useful thing. And sometimes you just need to have some objective recorded data to do that. So we're really quite keen on mobility scoring, as I say, but I think it has to be done for the right reasons, has to be done to try and ultimately give us less lame cows, not because somebody else in the industry is maybe telling us to do it. This is almost one of my last pieces of research, actually, that I'm going to present tonight. This, I think, is really one of the best pieces of research in terms of lame cows that I've ever seen. And it was a study that was done quite a long time ago at the University of Bristol, where they had 4 farms enrolled in the study. And 2 of the farms, they went and mobility scored those farms every 2 weeks, and then give the farmer a trimming list to actually go, well, these cows that we think are lame. They need trimming. Farmers had agreed before they started the study that they were going to lift those cows' feet within 3 to 4 days of the cows being mobility scored. And then there was 2 other farms in the study where they also went to mobility scores twice every 2 weeks, but farmers weren't given the results, and cows were treated conventionally. So in other words, cows were treated when the herdsman saw them lame, and basically these guys were looking at, well, if we mobility score regularly every 2 weeks and we then trim the cows, what happens? And actually, some really, really useful, interesting data as well is that actually, if you adopt this approach, if you look at trying to pick up cows early, if you do that and treat them, nearly 3/4 of these cows were better within 2 weeks, and actually just over 80% were better within 4 weeks. Whereas in the case of the conventionally treated cows, And these guys weren't doing a bad job. They weren't doing a bad job by any means. They were looking at their cows. They were doing their best to pick up lame cows. It's just that probably they weren't picking them up as soon. And to be honest, they probably weren't treating these cows as quickly as maybe they should have. But in those herds, only 50% of the cows were better 2 weeks after being treated. And the remainder required maybe a secondary treatment, but some of them required quite a few additional treatments just to get them right. And I think that's probably one of the real pieces of work that quantified what the benefit of mobility scoring can be. If you actually score cows regularly, if you do it consistently, and if you then go and pick their feet up, actually you can make quite big inroads into dealing with some lameness issues. Scoring cows is not rocket science. You need somewhere where you can see the cows walking. You ideally just want somewhere where you can walk the cows past you on a relatively flat surface where a cow can just take, 5 or 6 strides and you can have a look at them. And in an ideal world, you would look at these cows from the side and you'd also look at them from behind. But it's more getting them to walk past you calmly rather than gallop past you. Or in some cases, they do just stand there looking at you. But it's just trying to get them to walk past you and just then putting a score to what you see. And it's maybe a little bit difficult to see this, but this is the sort of industry standard scoring template. So this is from the AHDB website. For those of you on supermarket contracts, this would probably be the scoring system in general that people will be following. So there's 4 sort of scoring categories. I would often put the first 2 in together. So there's what we call score 0 and score 1 cows. Score 0 cows are essentially perfect. They're pretty much perfect. They walk even weight bearing. Their back isn't arched. They've got a flat back, and they just walk with sort of long fluid strides. And sort of one of the interesting things when you look at cows is that when a cow's not lame and when she's walking normally, actually her back foot lands in the spot where her front foot is just left. So basically their cows need to keep an eye on where they're placing their front feet. And after that, the back feet just follow. That's a little bit different for lame cows, but actually for cows that are walking normally, back foot follows the front foot. These cows walk smoothly, fluidly, not arching their back, just look really good. Score 1 cows, in a way, these are the type of cows you look at and maybe they're taking a little bit of steps and maybe a bit uneven, maybe a bit shortened and choppy in their stride. But actually when you look at them, you think, well, that cow's not walking perfectly, but I can't really pick up which leg might be lame. So for this reason, these cows often get lumped together. Score 0, score 1 cows. They're cows that probably just need rescoring. Wouldn't necessarily put them into a crush to lift their foot or anything. They're just cows, particularly score 1 cows, that would benefit from a rescore 2-4 weeks' time. The cows that are sort of the lameness cows are what we call the score 2 and the score 3 cows. And these are the cows really where you can sort of pick up on which leg is affected. So if we do it in reverse, score 3 cows really are quite lame. These are the cows that essentially can't keep up with the herd. So it's easy to tell which leg they're lame on. It's very, very obvious. They really don't want to take a lot of weight and they just cannot keep up with the rest of the herd. Score 2 cows are a little bit less severe. I think you can identify in nearly all cases which leg is lame, which leg they're lame on. And these cows will be just a bit slow. They'll be arching their back. And really, I think if you can pick which leg it is, they certainly need to come into a crush, have that foot lifted, and see what's what. So we're going to try and play a video, I hope. James is going to try and do a poll. So what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and share a screen with a video. We're going to play, it's going to be 10 cows. And it's just interesting for you guys just to write down for each cow what score you think it should get. So in general, as I say, I would lump score 0 and score 1 cows in together, but quite happy if people want to try and say this is score 0 and this is score 1. And certainly looking for If they're lame, do you think they're score 2 or score 3, and which leg they're lame on? And I hope this works. Afterwards, once we've seen the 10 cows, James has got a poll, so we're going to just try and get you guys to put your answers on, just so we can see what the majority of people think, and then I'll replay the video with the actual results so that people can start to compare what they thought it was and what we think it should have been. Let's have a go. So if I stop that, if I share my screen, and this, I'm hoping everybody can see that.
Yeah, we can see it, Mike.
Thanks, James. We'll see if it works. Okay, so it's going to be the first cow. It says 21, but just let's go cows 1 to 10. And I expect James to get all these right. And you're just looking really for, if you think it's lame, which leg. If you think it's imperfect, that's a score 1. If it's perfect, score 0. And if you think a cow is lame on more than one leg, feel free to write it down. And as I said earlier, I think thinking 80% of lame cows go lame in the back leg. So always worth paying attention to that. And if we're looking for, back position, are they arched? What's their head doing? Are they nodding when they put a potentially lame foot to the ground? So I think that's our last cow. Maybe before we see the answers, might be just interesting to get, I stop sharing. Will you have to, James might
No,
know.
yeah, I think I can take control now. So hopefully everyone remembered to score each cow. So if I launch the poll now, hopefully everyone can answer the questions. Not many people have answered them yet, so we can wait a little bit longer.
I don't think anybody has answered him yet.
Yeah. Here we go. Now they're voting.
I think we were being a bit unfair there. I think everybody you have to answer every question before it tells us you voted. So you're going to take a picture, James? Is that?
I think that can be the best idea. Yeah. Well, what I could just do, I'll just jot down what. Give it a little bit longer.
It's one of the things we say about mobility scoring is that ideally, it needs to be ideally needs to be the same person in the same location scoring a herd every time they do it. Just helps you get sort of more consistent results and sort of helps you build confidence in the whole process of scoring, really. So we have some vets and some vet techs who've been through some training courses to try and sort of standardize, our scoring. But really, I think one of the real important things is that if you're going to do some scoring on your own farm at home, it's just try and do it. Try and get the same person doing it all the time, so that it generates just some consistency.
Quite a few people are answering now, which is good.
Yep, we've got about 2/3 answered now, so that's good.
Don't worry, we can't see who's answered what, so it is all anonymous. Well, I think that was
5%.
75%. It's not too bad, is it?
Yeah, still going.
Still going up, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, are we happy with that, James? James is muted, so I can't hear him.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
We're happy with that. Right, well, I'll try and share my screen again and we'll replay the videos with some of the answers. There's a couple of these that I think are quite difficult, really, but let's see how you've done. Score yourselves against it and see what you think. Don't know if I need to move that poll out of the way. Right, so this is cow number 1, score 2 and a back left. I think some of these cows are actually quite difficult. Oops. Now, so
I don't think we can see you, Mike, at the moment.
Can you not?
Well, we can see you, but we can't see the.
Okay.
Oh no, we're back now.
We're back. Right. Well, I'll play it from here. Maybe go back to the first cow in a moment because I don't want to lose my voice, which is quite possible. So you happy? You can see me now?
Yeah.
So this is score cow 2, lame in the back left. I think this is really difficult. This cow looks like she's got a little bit arch in her back, and they're putting it down as a score 1, possibly on both back feet. I think personally that's really, really difficult. This is a good one. This cow's just normal, isn't it? Flat back, head down, feet tracking nicely. It's really good. And I suppose these are the cows that we really, really shouldn't miss out on. I'm a vet, and even I can tell that's lame. Little bit more subtle on this one, but head tends to bob when she tries to take the weight, arched in her back. Again, as I say, these are the type of cows, I would say this cow is possibly even a 0 personally, but I certainly wouldn't have any issue with just keeping an eye on her and rescoring. Yeah, I think that's a really good, really obvious one, isn't it? Lame in the back left. I don't know what James thinks about this cow, but I really struggle sometimes. I sort of think that cow is lame, but score 1, so I would rescore. I would be quite happy with that. And this cow as well, I personally possibly would score that as a score 1, but is that a score 2, James?
Oh yeah, I'll put it as a 1 maybe. Yeah, most people, as I said, it was a 1, so I agree with most
right,
people.
most people said that was a 1, so we'll come back to that in a moment. But yeah, so this is cow number 8. I think that's really obvious, isn't it? This cow is properly lame, non-weight bear, doesn't want to put much weight in it, really struggling, obviously lame in the back left. This cow, these guys are sort of suggesting maybe lame in the back right. Yeah, possibly, but not overly obvious. Actually, I think this cow is really, really difficult to pick up, and I would probably call that a score 1 personally, but so interesting that most people might have scored it at that. We missed cow 21, did we?
The first one, wasn't it?
Yeah, sorry. So cow 20 we didn't do. That's one of the previous ones. So cow number 21. Oh, I've gone too far back, have I? So that's lame. That's a score 2 cow, lame in the back left. So I don't know what people thought of that. Again, not as obvious as some of the others, but lame in the back left, slightly arched in the back, and just doesn't want to take proper weight in the back left. So hopefully most of you agreed with most of those, but I think really it is a case of just do it more from a mobility scoring point of view. It is just a case of getting out there and doing some. And it is amazing actually when you do start to do it. You score these cows as score 2 cows, and actually when you lift their feet up, they do have some bruising. They do have sort of some early onset lesions, and I think it's a really, really useful thing to do. So we are almost finished. Oops. What can you see at the moment?
Just you, Mike.
Oh God, just me. Can you see that?
Yeah, we're back.
So I'm just going to finish up a little bit with just how sort of mobility scoring and things fits into the overall picture, really. But it's not really working for me. And just from a prevention point of view, this was some of the early work that was done on lameness prevention, really some of the UK stuff, and identified, well, what were the sort of key areas that we need to focus on. And right in the middle sort of sits early identification of lame cows and sort of good effective treatment of the lesions. Some of the other areas that were sort of identified and have subsequently been built on, cow comfort and sort of good walking surfaces. And then sort of also from an infectious disease point of view, sort of clean passageways, keeping cows' feet clean, and that's sort of really focusing on a digital dermatitis prevention. And the other area that was sort of definitely identified was sort of the benefits of routine trimming, just in terms of maintaining good sort of hoof conformation. In other words, if you sort of have, and this can be read genetics as well, this can be read other management things, but just actually having good hoof conformation means that we're just less likely to have cows go lame, because these cows have got are walking properly, and they're actually putting the forces through their feet the right way. And what was sort of adopted via Dairy Co at the time, now AHDB, was as part of the Healthy Feet program. And the Healthy Feet program was sort of an industry-wide initiative to try and standardize maybe how we put in place some lameness control programs, and try and, in a way, try to use what research and what information was out there, and try and give us a framework for using that in a sort of sensible way. And so it really sort of distilled the areas for lameness prevention and lameness reduction down into these 4 areas. So low infection pressure, and that's a lot of that's to do with foot bathing, having less digital dermatitis, really. As I say, having good horn quality and hoof shape. So actually having decent horn quality, but also using regular trimming to sort of maintain good hoof shape and make sure these cows are walking properly. Lowering the forces on cows' feet, hugely important, and a lot of that is to do with cow comfort. Having decent cubicles, having decent cubicle beds, also maybe having straw yards for certain cows. And cow floor really was the thing of wide passageways, try and minimize the number of right angle turns. But the one really that they focused on a lot, and which probably hadn't had a lot of airtime up until that point, was the whole idea of early lameness detection and prompt effective treatment. And that's where mobility scoring fits into this whole picture, really. If we can identify cows early and treat them well, we can actually make quite a big difference. And it's actually something we can do without spending lots of money. We don't need lots of capital investment. We don't need to do a lot extra. It's just putting the management time into mobility scoring and then treating the cows. And so, it's something that I think every farm can do. I think everybody, we can do better. And I think it's certainly something that is well worth doing. So I would probably encourage anyone to mobility score, try and do it regularly, do it fortnightly, do it 4 weekly, and use the results. It's really good information, and actually it really pays you back. And just purely from a sort of psychological point of view, anything we can do to have less lame cows, I think, is a really good thing. Yeah, and this is, I'm sure you guys have some kit at home, but one of the things that sort of follows on from mobility scoring cows is, if we're going to mobility score them, I think we need to pick their feet up, and we actually need to trim them, and we need to go all in and do the best we can. So, yeah, I think that's me. Probably slightly over time, but don't know if anyone has any questions. Thank you for attending.
Yeah, there's quite a few questions coming through actually, Mike, now.
Oh, God. I don't know if I can answer them.
So first of all, we'll start off with how big an impact does diet play, and also genetics?
Yeah, so diet's an interesting one, really interesting one. We would probably, a lot of people who do more and more research in lameness would probably say that probably what we would have once referred to as laminitis probably really isn't actually a desperately big issue in cattle. So there was this sort of idea at one stage, and much like horses, cows had a dietary upset, and it then sort of spilled over into causing laminitis, which was an infection of inflammation of the laminae within the cow's feet, which then subsequently caused lameness. Actually, probably we would say that laminitis probably really isn't an issue in cattle. It might be very, very occasional animal that suffers, but actually as a big player in terms of lameness prevention, laminitis and feed from that point of view, probably not a big issue. However, I think in terms of high yielding cows, actually, as we feed cows better, and as we ask them to give more and more milk, what these cows tend to do is they tend to grow a lot of hoof horn faster. And because of that, you can end up with cows really that need much more regular trimming to help them walk better. So I think diet is significant from the point of view that we need, it means we need to trim cows more frequently if we're going to basically put them in a higher and higher plane of nutrition, because they're giving more and more milk. It has an indirect impact on lameness really, rather than a direct impact, but it is something we have to be mindful of. And the other question I think was genetics. Yeah, I think genetics is definitely important. I think it's just at the moment we are probably struggling. We would probably struggle to reliably pick bulls that are genuinely going to give us less lame cows. We can certainly pick bulls for foot angle, type. We can certainly look at the type traits, and we can pick bulls to give us better foot conformation and cows that should walk better. We're probably just struggling a little bit to then say, well, that definitely then correlates and carries on into us having less lame cows. I think there's no doubt there's a genetic component. It's just it's still a bit of work in progress as to how we pick the right bulls to do that.
And then a question about digital dermatitis. Which is the best product to use in a foot bath?
Yeah, best product that's always an interesting question. I will answer that question, but probably before I answer it, I would probably say the sort of foot bath and frequency. And not only foot bathing your milking cows, but also having the capacity to foot bath your dry cows and in-calf heifers. I think that's part of the real key with digital dermatitis, having the ability to foot bath your cows daily if necessary, and foot bath your dry cows and in-calf heifers at least weekly, if not twice weekly. I think that's what makes the real difference. We've always used formalin very successfully. I think it is going to be banned. It's not particularly nice stuff to work with because it is carcinogenic. But I have no problem with formalin foot baths. Copper sulfate is good, even though there is problems with that building up in the land. Actually, most chemicals are actually quite good from a disinfection point of view for digital dermatitis, but copper sulfate, formalin, any of the above, quite good really. But they are more of a prevention. Actually, then once you have a cow that's lame, you probably do need to treat it with some topical antibiotics. So basically some oxytetracycline, some blue spray. So foot baths are really important, really good. Most of the chemicals work fine. You just need to do them frequently enough.
I think that's the end of the questions. So unless anyone else has any more questions.
I'm sure if anyone has a burning question to think of subsequently, they can always email us, and we'll certainly answer. Just like to say thanks to everyone for attending, and thanks to everyone for attending the previous talks as well. Feedback has been good from our point of view, so I hope people have enjoyed them. We've certainly enjoyed doing them. So, big thank you to everyone who's put the effort in, and thank you all for attending.
There's one more question, Mike.
Thought I was off the hook.
When is the best routine foot trimming, or when is the best time to do it?
Yeah, I think certainly when we're talking about high yielding cows, we're probably really at the stage now where most cows should be getting 2 trims per lactation. I think a dry off trim is pretty much essential. And then, we are looking at these cows where, when the cows start to go lame, will they start to go lame second and third month after calving? So I think if we're talking about putting in place some sort of routine trimming protocol, I would probably go around, 60 to 90 days in milk. Probably erring towards 60 days if possible, but if you're getting in a contract foot trimmer once a month or something, probably looking at doing cows 60 to 90 days or 50 to 80 days in milk maybe. And certainly a trim in the month before dry off is really important.
I think that's all the questions now, so
yeah, brilliant.
No more.
Yep, good stuff. Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Bye.
See you now. Bye-bye.